For as long as I can remember, I've been my own harshest critic. I've always had high standards for myself, sometimes too high. Growing up, I was often told to aim for the best. Be the best student, do the best work, stand out. I took this to heart, but what I didn't realize at the time was that striving for perfection often left me feeling inadequate. By the time I was 22, I had achieved a lot. I had gotten into a great college, made good grades, landed internships, and secured my first full time job after graduation. On the outside, I had all the markers of success. I was ticking off the boxes that society tells you should lead to happiness and fulfillment. But inside, I felt like I was always falling short. Despite my accomplishments, I rarely took time to feel proud of myself. Instead, I focused on what I hadn't achieved yet. There was always the next thing to do, the next goal to reach. Even when I had achieved something significant, I would shrug it off and move on to the next task. It was like I couldn't allow myself to celebrate anything without feeling guilty, as though resting or taking pride in what I had accomplished meant I wasn't working hard enough. I remember looking at my friends, my family, and my colleagues, and seeing them celebrate their successes with pride. They would share their wins, and I'd always find myself downplaying my own. Oh, it's not a big deal. I still have so much to do. I thought that if I celebrated, I'd be seen as arrogant, or worse, lazy. I thought that pride in myself was something I had to earn and that it wasn't something I was allowed to feel unless I had reached some idealized version of success. But over time, the weight of constantly striving without recognizing my achievements began to take a toll. I started to burn out. I felt drained, unmotivated, and disconnected from the things I once loved. And that's when it hit me. I was so busy chasing what I thought I should be that I had forgotten to appreciate what I was. At 24, I reached a point where I could no longer ignore how I was feeling. I was sitting at my desk one evening, looking over the progress I had made in my career. On paper, everything was perfect. I had been promoted, I was recognized for my work, and I had accomplished things that many people would be proud of. But when I looked at my reflection, all I saw was someone who was constantly exhausted and never felt satisfied. It was then that I realized something important. I had been measuring my worth by the external markers of success: promotions, accolades, achievements. But I had neglected to measure my worth by who I was as a person. I had been seeking validation from outside sources, believing that only through the approval of others could I be proud of myself. It was a hard pill to swallow. I had been so focused on what I hadn't done yet that I had completely ignored everything I'd accomplished. For the first time, I took a moment to sit with that thought. I had done a lot, but I never allowed myself to pause and feel proud of it. That was the turning point for me. I realized that pride didn't need to be based on external validation. It didn't need to come from praise or recognition from others. It had to come from within. The journey to learning how to be proud of myself wasn't an easy one. For years, I had been taught that humility was the key to success. I was told not to boast, to stay grounded, and that pride was something that could be seen as selfish or arrogant. But there is a fine line between being humble and undermining yourself. I had spent so many years downplaying my successes to avoid looking too proud. But in doing so, I was actually diminishing my own worth. The hardest part of learning to be proud of myself was battling the voice in my head that told me I wasn't enough. I had spent so much time telling myself that I had to do more, be more, and achieve more. But I realized that this constant striving was exhausting and unsustainable. It was draining me of my energy and taking away my joy. I had been so focused on the destination that I had forgotten to appreciate the journey. I had to learn how to accept myself, not as the person I thought I should be, but as the person I was. I had to forgive myself for not being perfect, for not having everything figured out. I had to remind myself that it was okay to make mistakes, that I didn't need to be perfect to be worthy of love and respect, and that my achievements were valid, regardless of how small or large they seemed. Once I realized that pride was about acknowledging my own worth, independent of external recognition, I began to change how I viewed myself. Instead of waiting for others to tell me I was doing well, I started telling myself. I began to celebrate the small victories, the days when I made it through a difficult project, the moments when I pushed myself outside of my comfort zone, and the times when I chose to be kind to myself instead of criticizing myself for not doing more. I started to set boundaries with myself and others. I learned to say no when I needed to prioritize my well-being, and to allow myself time to rest without feeling guilty. I learned that self-care wasn't a luxury. It was necessary for me to perform at my best and to feel truly fulfilled. Most importantly, I learned to be proud of the person I was becoming. It didn't matter if I wasn't where I thought I should be, or if I hadn't checked off every box on my list. I began to celebrate the growth that I had made, the lessons I had learned, and the resilience I had shown. I had been through a lot, and I had made it through with strength, grace, and perseverance. One of the most powerful shifts I experienced in my journey was learning to validate myself. I no longer relied on external praise or approval to feel good about my achievements. Instead, I looked inward. I acknowledged my hard work, my struggles, my growth, and my success, all on my own terms. Self-validation became the foundation of my self-esteem. I started to recognize my own worth without needing anyone else to tell me how valuable I was. It wasn't about arrogance, it was about understanding that I was enough as I was. I didn't need to be perfect. I didn't need to have everything figured out. I just needed to accept myself and be proud of how far I had come. The journey to self-pride wasn't about achieving some idealized version of success. It was about accepting where I was, right at that moment, and understanding that I had the power to change, to grow, and to continue building the life I wanted. I realized that I didn't have to wait for permission to be proud of myself. I could do it whenever I felt it was right. It didn't matter what others thought. It didn't matter if the world saw my success or not. What mattered was that I recognized it and I celebrated it. Today, I can honestly say that I am proud of myself. It's not an easy thing to admit, especially after years of self-doubt and second-guessing. But I've learned that pride isn't about boasting or seeking approval from others. It's about acknowledging who you are and how far you've come, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Learning to be proud of myself has been one of the most liberating experiences of my life. I no longer feel the need to compare myself to others. I no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. I'm proud of the work I've done, the challenges I've faced, and the person I've become because of it all. Pride is no longer something I see as selfish or arrogant. It's a sign of self-love, self-respect, and self-acceptance. I've learned that it's okay to be proud of myself, and I don't need anyone else's approval to feel that way. And that's the most important lesson of all. You are worthy of pride, just as you are. You don't need to wait for anyone else to tell you that you're doing well. You don't need to wait for the world to validate you. You have the power to validate yourself, to celebrate your achievements, and to embrace the incredible person you've become.